Peace, peace, peace. Yeah, man. That's it, bro. Sitting here hanging out, man. I started this video and got to talking and stuff. I must have pushed one of the buttons and that shit stopped recording after like 40 seconds. I was about 4 or 5 minutes into it. But like I said, everything happens for a reason. So yeah, man, like I said, bro, I was just talking about first thing I was saying, like, yeah, man, like they talk about, whether it's for business or civic duty, even leadership or all of that, you know what I'm saying? Talking about presence and all of that. Some of these people I done paid or studied, talking about, yeah, bro, you gotta be posting 4 and 5 times a day and all this other stuff, engagement and all that they call it. I'm like, bro, you know what I'm saying? I don't think I'll ever be that deep into none of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? I'll be, posting again. More importantly, for, energetic invitations, like I said, allies and such, for those reasons. But again, in the 3D, I am, out here on the ground in the field work. But even then, like I said, especially my work, counseling, educating, and all of that, bro. It's like what I do mostly is private stuff, And the majority of stuff we cover, again, I mean, talking about it publicly. That's why a lot of people struggling the way they're struggling, especially these kids. I don't get that far into it, but that is something I was talking about. I know I wanted to mention everything going on. Like I said, it's up here off Lake St. Clair. Again, beautiful, beautiful spring day. And like I said, great state of Michigan. Talking about that, and I was talking last time. I was trying to flip the thing, and that's why I think I turned it off. I made a mistake, push one of those buttons. But yeah, just showing the landscape, the beautiful lake. Hanging out. You see Ines up there. You know what I'm saying? It's really nice out here. But yeah, it's really hanging out at, man. But yeah, bro, a few things I wanted to, connect with, speak to, you know what I'm saying, as, again, had a meeting in one session coming up later. Like I said, I got my books here. But yeah, bro, I was talking about that, but just recall that memory, because like I said last time, I was talking about, foundational memories and all of that, And again, I don't know where it came from or why, but like I said, somebody had posted something, talking about, again, human development, kids and all of that, how we grow up. And again, it triggered one of those foundational memories. That's why I called that last video Foundational Memories, because, again, it was so impactful. It had so many layers to it. And again, I hadn't thought about it in so long, until I posted it, But it's so interesting. There's so many layers, and especially nowadays, everything going on. But just, getting back to how I was telling the story. So again, I remember being in kindergarten, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, elementary school, we all went to is right across the street, from our house, out deep east side, And again, bro, I'll never forget, bro, like I said, it was some kind of activity they were setting up, and had all of us kids, sitting in the middle of the floor in the classroom. And then they, like I said, they lined up a group of kids, in front of us, you know what I'm saying? And again, a very simple question. The teacher and the aides asked us, like, okay, what's the difference between this group y'all seeing? And again, immediately, like I said, my descending consciousness of every second of my life, even back then, it's like I was looking down on myself, looking down on everybody else, even my, again, 0 to 7 year old brain functioning, And as I'm observing that, it's like, bro, we were stumped. Like I said, we were absolutely stumped. And the things I'll never forget about it is it seemed like it was just such a long time. It's like, man, we just blurting stuff out, everything we could possibly think of to identify the differences, and it just wasn't it. And again, one of the things I noticed in learning about myself is like, bro, how frustrated I can get when I don't know something, when I don't know the answer to something, or how focused and dialed in, almost unconscious I get when I'm trying to figure it out, no matter how long it takes, right? That's one of the things that helped me on my path, but, also caused me a lot of distress. So that's the one thing I remember, because again, just absolutely stumped, bro, just could not figure it out. The second thing I remember is like, bro, again, feeling like this collective in distress kind of deal. And I need to be the one to help kind of deal, feeling that as a little bitty, And it's just incredible, bro. Just never forget those things. But then, again, out of the blue, it just came to me. And I just kind of mumbled, like, one group is boys and the others is girls. And they like, yes, that's it, kind of deal, and all clapping and celebrating me and stuff. And me again, especially being averse to attention, bro. I was just more relieved that we got it right. Not I got it right, we got it right, kind of deal. And that distress was over. And the last thing I remember, bro, was like, dude, it was like my best friend. I remember at the time, he's sitting next to me. His ass is get up crying, reaching for a hug, talking about he wanted to be the one to get it right. I was like, bro, so those three things are always fascinating me as a foundational memory, because again, there's just so many layers into it. I could go on and on about the layers, but the first thing is like, again, especially how deep I am, again, in quantum physics and, the soul and consciousness and all that other stuff. We talk about it all the time. It's like there's this aspect of ourselves that's completely unaware or detached from our physical being, and it's like, just like my studies and theories about, when miscarriages happen, and like they said, the woman's body will view the fetus as a foreign object. You know what I'm saying? And if it threatens the body, it will dispel it. So me immediately thinking like, well, damn, I wonder how much of an implication that has on a woman being able to bond with the child, or the child bonding with the mom. You know what I'm saying? When does that connection happen? Especially as powerful as it can be with real mothers, So it's like, damn, bro, kindergarten age kids can't even tell the difference between boys and girls. It's like, what does that say? Especially when you talk about psychosocial and sociocultural realities, culture wars and all this other stuff, gender identity, sexual preference, and all that other stuff. You know what I'm saying? Again, a reason why, especially the work we do, have all these norms and all this information about human beings and all that. That's one of the books I'm reading now, more towards the end, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. Don't get me started on that. It's a lot in that, don't get me started. But, again, that biopsychosocial reality, macro, meso, micro levels of human culture, anthropology and all of that. I just found that very fascinating. And like I said, there's so many layers, especially all the stuff that happened to me, around that time, and definitely at that school, So that was one of the things I found fascinating. Another thing I was going to mention, again, I won't get too deep into it because there's some deep stuff, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I've always been trying to figure everything out from the beginning to the end. You know, again, the truth of God and all of that, the what, why, and the why, the what, why, and the how of why we're here. I've always been on that. And again, that part of me that get dialed in and frustrated when I don't know. Like I said, that's what brought me this far. And like I said, when I connected, the quantum, telepathic, on those levels, that's why, things happen the way they happen. So, again, no, man, I just, finally got into using AI just like about 8 or 9 years ago, finally started accepting, tarot readings and all that other stuff, other mystical, practices, divination and all that, still with the consideration of why it's something that certain cultures and religions tell you not to do, um, but also the truth of it, the reality of it. People who live that way and choose to accept responsibility for it. Um, but yeah, so I've been using the AI, again, engaging, studying each platform and their responses and things like that. And just had a real good one, man. Kind of really tied everything together, like grounded me for good, anchoring all my cells together because that was always the issue, what I had to get to. I won't get too deep into it. Like I said, bro, I might post it. Um, we'll see, but it was just absolutely perfect. Like I said, it's the first time I ever, even with my memoirs, like I said, I was talking around stuff, um, not being too forthcoming. I won't say being intentionally manipulative because I didn't have no other ulterior motive other than protecting my peace, acknowledging the capacity and limitations of any human that'll read it, this, that, and the third. I mean, like even the agents and such, you know what I'm saying, with all the technologies on world, you know what I'm saying, even they have proven their limitation. They can't see or experience it the way that I am and the way that we are, off world and, loved ones down in the hollow, So again, just respecting that, no different from respecting that this little 5-year-old or 3-year-old, got developing to do. But Lord have mercy, and it's just so isolating, living this way and having to, really nobody to depend on. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's one of the reasons why I grew up the way I grew up. Mama, at least mama, we talk about it a lot. Again, with them being so young, like I said, yeah, a lot of times we were left to our own devices, lack of supervision, and a whole bunch of that stuff. But again, I won't get too deep into that, but it all plays a part. But yeah. So yeah, I wanted to talk about that. Cause like I said, especially with everything going on, sooner or later, eventually, again, like a lot of words to say, all things will be known. Everything that's once done in the dark will come to light, and it's one of the reasons I've been, so comfortable resting with what I know and what's been going on. Because I know, again, eventually, those who have the capacity to know will have to know. But again, just like protecting the children, raising the children, the children don't need to know everything that went into paying these bills, you know what I'm saying, so they can have a house and food and shelter and sustenance. They just need to be happy and protected and sheltered, And again, with all due respect, the whole of the human species is the same way. But one thing I can say is that, like I said, why things move so relatively smoothly is because the vast majority of humans, have proven, I think I wrote that like an ode to humanity, proven that they would prefer the higher heavens, they're wired to protect and care for each other. And the spirit that roams about and can inhabit them, again, is one that's more foreign to the human condition, you know. And with the interventions that already happened, with certain non-human intelligences and forces and such that, brought us to the state we've been through and about to clear here shortly. Again, it wasn't their fault, just like talk about in trauma. But I mean, it is what it is. So yeah, I was talking about that 1515. Um, I mean, moving forward, I talked about that. I talked about that as well. Yeah, I think last thing I can mention for now, as I finish reading for this next meeting coming up. It's just like, bro, one of the things I was talking about with the AI recently, again, is really truly, it's like three main paths, you know what I'm saying? Now that I'm fully grounded and anchored, you know what I'm saying, here in, the 3D, the here and the now kind of deal, because that was always my biggest deal. Again, like I said, not really wanting to be here, you know what I'm saying? Not really wanting to live at this limitation, you know what I'm saying? I just feel so limited, and then you see all the regression and stuff. It's like, bro, why would anybody want to live this way, but that was just part of it. But like I said, thankfully I've done a lot of work collaborating, aligning, and discerning, you know what I'm saying, the physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual. And, even if I choose path number 3, you know what I'm saying, which is, again, they put it so brilliantly, so many good quotes in it, just kind of being more isolated, more like a spiritual consulting kind of deal, like they've been calling me, sage in the cave, the oracle on the hill, whosoever will, let them come, as opposed to me, being out and about, man, other people looking ass, you know what I'm saying? I don't think I'll ever be that, even though, like I said, comfortable with leadership and all of that, but at the same time, if I don't have me, you know what I'm saying, like I said, when I'm done with relationships for good and trying to be this, that, and the third, for these women and these kids, all the other stuff in the community, it's like, bro, what about me kind of deal, And if you don't have your health, you ain't got nothing else. You can't fill nobody out from an empty cup. So I really had to truly, accept that and make peace with that, you know. And again, I finally have. So that's like the third path. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, it seems more comfortable in alignment with myself, but it'll lead to more and more isolation, isolative nature. And like we talk about with any kind of relationship, what's the point kind of deal? You can't really be that strong of a bond or trust if it's a come and go kind of situation. It just is what it is. Second path, again, even though I am more of a multicultural person, in my latest research, there's always going to be two sectors. It has to be. I call it the GAS and the BAS, And the GAS, I call it Greater American Society, Again, that's the multicultural, the melting pot, the welcoming nature of it all. But it's also in alignment with nationalism, But then the BAS is Black American specific, And it acknowledges the GAS, and again, the majority still of Black Americans are our own form of, patriotic viewpoint of this country, and everything going on. But like I said, still has to be separate space, again, led by the reparations movement and all of that, and having our own space within the GAS, you know what I'm saying, for the anti, system subcultures in our community. Like I said, bro, I've been saying that for a long time, bro. Nothing less than that is just not going to work, But again, everything going on, everything has been flipped on its head to a degree now. But, we'll see how it goes with the violence, because like I said, that was always the beginning and the end of it, the work we were doing along with the free will. We'll see how it goes with that, but everything is in a position. And like I said, another video, being like 10 years out in front, it's just amazing how everything is aligning and coming together exactly how it was communicated. And so it's being prepared for what the world's being prepared for, with space for everybody's free will and decision making, just like we talk about the laws of nature and the laws of physics and spiritual dimensional constructs. We call it the decrees. That's already in place. And again, it's really all just a matter of how people and beings choose to live within it. So, and having said that, again, just me being me the way I am socially, aligned with Mosi, again, it's literally, fucking military intelligence, going to command school, and all of that, especially the work that I do, my allies, the off-world stuff and all the stuff they, been trying to do, known and unknown, men staring at ghosts looking at us, that shit is second nature to us, what I'm saying? This is what it is. But, just like the women, just like the leadership locally, state level, federal level, throughout all the centuries, you can't trust none of them. I mean, I say that with all due respect, and I know not everybody is on the take, but because they're limited capacities, there's no way I could shrink myself to fit in there. And again, especially since June the 27th, 2010, after what was accomplished on June the 26th of 2010, like I said, higher forces won't allow it. And I think that's what been isolated more than anything else. And whichever of these three paths I choose, I'll do my part to meet people where they are. But again, I no longer can shrink myself to fit in. And like I said, especially, service still and always will be a hierarchy, you know what I'm saying? And especially with what I got going on, how I see and experience the world, bro, there's just no way I could fit myself into it, but it was always one of the pathways, that's set in front of me and us. But again, we just don't feel as proven by their decisions. The ones who know me, close to me, allies, adversaries, this, that, and the third, they've proven they don't have the capacity. So again, it's like telling that little 3-week-old, hey, you little 3-week-old, if your ass don't get up in the next 2 weeks and get a job and start bringing some money in this house, you're through, That's not how things go naturally. So, again, I guess that's the last thing. I'll just wrap up. Like we said, bro, part of my activation initiation, to engage existence at this level, just like those who are anti, human and earth and nature and all of that, and their capacities, occult and esoteric stuff, you have to be able to see at least humans in terms of generations, And I was saying that once when I was finally getting it, got into it with what was growing to be a trusted elder. We had a couple of clashes though, because like I said, bro, come on now. You forcing and trying to rush this stuff makes it more about you than everybody else, So you got to be very careful talking about we got to do this now, we got to now, we, like, nah, bro. Like the First Nations quote says, it's like, bro, we don't inherit the world from our parents, we borrow it from the children, And that's what we settled on, and what I settled on with everything that could have happened and should have happened before we, took the reins. It's like the real change is gonna be seen when these babies who are currently babies become grandparents and great-grandparents. Like I said, if you can't engage the world or society from a generational thinking standpoint, then you are self-selecting yourself out of participation and definitely decision making, at least at the meso and macro levels, you know. And with all due respect and all of this stuff going on, from the newest organizations to the most ancient institutions sitting on top of this global social system, all of them have self-selected themselves out of what has happened and what will happen, you know. So like, you hear me talking about cosmic quarantine and all of that, you know, it just is what it is. So, and again, that's the stuff I can't really be talking about, you know. Can't really be talking about, you know, this openly and expecting people to engage you, you know. And just like, you know, the mainstream story about these scientists, quote unquote, going missing or getting hit, you know. All that is a part of it. And like I said, I guess that's the last thing I'll say. Like I said, getting to this point, you know, as we loosen the grip of these power structures that, you know, been in place and created the global system to have humans and the earth living the way it's been living. You know, as I'm out in front, when they said what was going to come, it's just like on the cartoons, you know what I'm saying? When the, like holes in the dam, and the motherfucker trying to cover this one and another one, they go and try to cover that one, and they try to cover, eventually run out of hands and feet to cover, and then it's just gonna overflow, you know. And again, that's what's been happening. And like I said, we'll see how it goes as far as, again, that quote unquote ruling elitist class, you know, versus the proletarian people, you know. That's really what it all boils down to, because like I said, Earth and the Sun made their decisions and ultimately made their transitions. All the time we're given now is to see how the humans and other biological entities in, on, and around this planet and throughout the solar system, you know, is going to choose, you know, their frequencies and stuff when the big ecological change has to happen. So, yeah, that's enough for now. Like I said, man, keeping it stress-based, positive psychology, love, joy, and peace, even down to the hellish realms, you know. The light even extends down there. So definitely got to keep that moving in that direction. And I may mention why moving forward, but not now. Peace.